Hi, welcome back to RohrichKnose Best podcast and YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe to my channel, and also I'm on Apple and Spotify as well, and all things health, wellness, and plastic surgery and beyond. So today, let's talk about fillers. You know, the rise and fall of fillers and what's next, the biostimulants and beyond. So I am privileged today to have an incredible physician, aesthetic physician for 23 years, Dr. Todd Schlifstein from New York City, who's going to talk to us about what's the big deal about why fillers are on the decline, or are they, and biostimulators and regenerative is on the incline. So tell us a little bit about why fillers are kind of being sought less than before.
Well, I think you have multiple reasons for that, right? You saw a lot of overfilled people over the years, right?
Yes.
A lot of overtreated people from there. You don't see a lot of the great results. Why? Because the great results should be undetectable.
Right.
So on social media, that gets amplified, and certainly that gets, a lot of people hating on things. Yeah. When you sell fear on social media, it tends to work. You get a lot of views, you get a lot of comments. And you say something's a pharmaceutical, it's not natural, it has all these side effects, it lasts forever, right? From these new MRI studies, it's pretty easy to create fear, right? Even though they've been around and well studied for decades and used around the world. So I think the fear factor is definitely out there. I think people healing themselves is very popular now. Less medication, more natural. So anything biostimulatory, bioregenerative sounds very appealing, right? So I want to get away from artificial. I want to get more natural, right? I want to get away from processed foods and eat whole foods.
Yeah, all
so I think the same thing goes in aesthetics.
Yeah.
Right? So, and we're looking for undetectable aesthetics.
Right.
Well, to me, it should have been that way 23 years ago. But, right? So
you're right.
Just got carried away, and providers didn't know how to say no. So do you say there's bad outcomes from bad filler? I say there's bad injectors.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So I think
exactly.
You have bad technology? No, I think you have bad people using technology,
yeah.
right?
Or you have greedy people.
If I get a bad surgical scar, do I blame the scalpel or do I blame the surgeon?
Right. That's exactly wise words. And you're so right. I mean, these fillers are safe. It's just that they're over-injected and there's the greed phenomena. And so I agree. I mean, it's just like saying my Botox didn't work. Well, really? It's because probably you didn't put it in correctly. So it's the same thing. But
right. The right dose, the right location, by the right person. Or nowadays you have to worry about fake Botox and fake fillers too.
Right. Right. So the
black market is crazy.
I agree.
We have to worry about illegal injectors, illegal providers. I mean, medical facilities that don't look like medical facilities.
Oh, yeah. And
so we have so many concerns now that we didn't have before.
Right.
I think also people will also forget that after COVID, we had a huge influx of patients, but also we had a huge influx of new providers, a lot of new injectors out there. I went to nursing school and then I went right to aesthetic training. Well, you never even practiced or had experience, and they train, they take these courses without supervision, and more is more. They get paid a commission, and all of a sudden overfilled faces, which I don't think it should be a surprise if that's the model you set up. It's a model for disaster, right?
Right, exactly right. And less is always more, especially in fillers, and people are tired of it. And I think also, finally, you're having, the Kardashians and everybody taking fillers out, and now they're saying, oh, you know what? You don't look you look pretty good the way you used to look. And I think that's a good thing, but I don't think we should blame the filler. We should blame probably the injector in most cases.
Yeah, I think if we don't have statistics on this, but if you look at the percentage of people who are newer injectors with less than 4 years experience, right? It's probably a huge percentage.
Skyrocketing. And you're right. Yeah.
The first filler came out, all we did it for was nasolabial folds. Now that's the last thing we inject, if ever.
That's right. 2004.
That was the indication.
Yes.
We had big choice, Restylane, Juvederm.
That's it. And now we have like 24 plus, and the same with neuromodulators. So I think it takes a lot more education, and a lot of it takes common sense and being safe and looking at a patient, because just like you, I get patients all the time that come in and they want so much done, and I usually inject half of that amount for fillers or neuromodulators because I want to see how it looks on them versus blowing them up. And yet when you go to
say the same thing. I never like doing that much at one time. Let's say someone does need 8 syringes, or I think they
I
need 8
never do
syringes.
that.
Yeah, I think that's way too much. Why? Because I know if I inject the temples and the cheeks and I get a certain amount of swelling, the time I go to the jawline, what am I going to do? Match the swelling here, or I'm going to assume it's swollen? And we know there's swelling for about 2 weeks. And then there's also something we don't talk about was like integration.
Right.
So over time of the next 4 to 6 weeks, I always feel like it settles, it integrates with the tissue, and then all of a sudden it looks very natural and contoured.
Right.
A lot different what it looks like after I initially injected it. Yeah, but business says do it all at once. You got them in the office, do it all, right? I don't want to lose the business, and I want to do a full face rejuvenation. Well, I also want the patient to wake up tomorrow not going, oh my God, what did I do? And is that still me?
Right. I agree.
With the patients, yeah, they want immediate results, but I always say one of the best things you can tell a patient is no.
Exactly right. And you know what?
No.
Your patients really respect you more when you say what you just did. Because my patients
100%.
my patients will always know that when they come to see me, I'm not going to do crazy stuff and I won't over-inject them. I'll see them back in 2-3 months. And you know what? If they want a little more, we can do it then versus, the pillow face. So, okay, so that's the rise and fall of fillers, and I think it's some of it social media driven. Okay, now, of course, there's the advent of the biostimulatory agents, and they're both great, Sculptra and Radius. They're all great. They're different ways of doing biostimulation of collagenesis,
Right.
And they're both great. And I think the biggest controversy has been, how do they affect the tissue long term? Especially as a plastic surgeon, I'm always asked, how do they affect me when I'm doing a facelift? And I did a facelift today, and I saw a patient that had Radius injected. And the thing is, it's all about where it's injected, and so this again comes down to the injector. Both of them are excellent biostimulators, but in this case, it was injected superficial, so it didn't get into the SMAS or deep layer. So it was no problem. I just picked it off. It was no big deal. So what's been your experience with the use of biostimulators?
I think biostimulants, when I started I think like 2008, and everyone at the time told me, don't do it. It's unpredictable. It's a mess. You never know what you're getting. Well, it turned out to be a very popular thing, and I grew into it, where at one point I was the highest prescribing user of Sculptra in New York City.
Really?
A lot of it. It didn't plan it that way. It ended up that way. Why? Because when you need volume everywhere, I'm not putting hyaluronic acid everywhere. To me, I got to think of it. I need a different approach.
Right.
So if I add a little bit of volume diffusely, and I also improve the skin, the collagen, at the same time, get a little bit of tightness, a little bit of skin tightness, not face tightness, which are two different things in my opinion.
100%.
Right? We can skin tight, or you can do a surgical lifting.
Yep.
Two different things, and they're always mixed. So the biostimulants can be used very good when I see someone who has what I call pan volume loss. Everywhere's lost volume, right? So I need volume that way. And there's also different ways of injecting it. When people inject it superficially into the dermis and they stay in the same plane, it's evenly throughout the same plane, you really don't have problems. And when I refer someone to a facelift, the surgeon says, it wasn't an issue.
No problem. And especially if you blend it or dilute it. Yeah.
It's dilution, it's injecting techniques. If you're not careful, it looks really easy when you're watching someone do it. But if you're on all different planes, it's going to end up everywhere.
I agree.
Right? There's not much of a difference between superficial dermis, deep dermis. We're talking millimeters, right? So It's very easy to get in all different layers.
Right.
And certainly if you're getting closer to the muscular layer, you can have other issues. But also some people also do it other ways. Like Shino Bay, huge Sculptra fan for many years. He also does something what he calls structural, where he injects just on the periosteum itself, which I don't think is going to interfere with any plastic surgery you guys are going to be doing.
No.
So it's either all the way deep on the bone, because it does mimic bone very nicely and gives you some structural support, and then superficially for the dermal support, right? So if you're doing that in the two planes, I've never had an issue,
No, I agree.
And plastic surgeons who said I couldn't do the facelift because of the Sculptra.
Right, and the same with Radius, same way. You either go superficial, you go deep.
But
like I do it in periapical area for rhinoplasty all the time. I go deep, and it lasts a long time, and it's very smooth. So, no, I think it's very important. So it's really.
Also, when you hyperdilute that, you have a lot less problems. It goes in smoothly.
100%.
You dilute it and inject them probably. Nodules. Fortunately, I've never really seen those things. Why? I think if you're doing it the right way and you're really spreading it out, yeah, it looks very easy when you watch someone, but you really need to be skilled and highly trained for that.
Right.
You know, if I tell people when you're injecting after 5 years, all right, then you're ready to have the needle control, the eye control, the 3D perception, where you're ready to learn how to start doing that.
Right.
Before that, you still need the hands, right?
100%.
I'm sure it's with surgery. Certain types of things you can do great, but when you get to this level, you're ready for the more advanced stuff, right?
Exactly right. I mean, that's such a great analogy, Todd, because, you know, as you become a more mature and talented surgeon, you learn from that and you say, wow, I know exactly that plane that I'm going to be in. And the same thing for filling. Because, I mean, you're right. When you see somebody that's talented injecting Sculptra or Radius, it's brilliant and it really is smooth. And I think the blending of it, the injection technique is very important. So I think both are good. And I think HA fillers are good. I think HA fillers just less is more. And also they don't always, you know, resorb long term. And I think especially in the mobile areas, if they're over injected, and we've seen that. So I think those are all very wise things.
Those mobile areas, you know, you got to be cautious in their use, because if you're moving all the time, like your lips or perioral, yeah, that's definitely going to have more of a chance of migrating than if I do a deep periosteal injection on your jawline, on your melee area. Have less concern about migration.
Okay, so in the last few minutes, I want to talk about the regenerative mode. We've done the fillers, we've done the biostimulatory, now the regenerative, the PRP, the PRF, and of course, PDGF, which is the new hot one on the block that's got 4 FDA approvals. It's a phenomenal product. It's called Ariescent. So where do you see those fitting in the future as we go down this lane of bioregeneration in both, you know, in this market as well as what our patients want?
I think PRP has its role in skin rejuvenation, post-laser, post-microneedling, and combination, hair restoration. Obviously not using me as an example. You know, PRF, I think we've seen even better results with combining it with albumin, heating it and cooling it and making a gel.
Yeah.
It does give some volume, but it's a little unpredictable. It may take more than one treatment, but if someone really didn't want hyaluronic acid filler because it's toxic, it is an option, but it's less predictable.
Yeah, but it's like a supercharged PRP. But the big thing about both of them, it comes from your own cells and platelets. So there's some time and you have to spin it and you have to do that. And I think, you know, if you were younger, it works better. If you're older, it probably doesn't work quite as good. Hence, PDGF.
I think, just like biostimulants is based on your body's response. So after a certain age, there's diminishing returns, you know, the 35 to 45 window.
Perfect.
Vaguely, I think you see the best responses after that. Yeah, I'm going to anticipate less of a stimulatory effect. And that's just not me being a mean person. It's just what the science says.
Right.
You know, it's just right. So I expect less. And I want patients to expect less and have realistic expectations of what it's really going to achieve, especially if they're investing in multiple treatments.
Yep, and the same with PRP and PRF. As the older you get, the less of the effect you have. Hence, PDGF is on the horizon, and I think it's got 4 FDA approvals. It's got 5 million uses. It's been amazing. It's been launched, and I think for topical, not intravenous use. And there's ongoing studies for all kinds of things. I think it's a phenomenally safe product when used properly.
Yeah, I think right now as a topical, I think anything injection-wise is, I don't want to get into this whole discussion.
No, I know. But I mean, it's in debate.
I think, let's just say PDGF injections we're not there yet.
Exactly.
Right? We're ahead of ourselves. Potentially, I think we're all excited about the potential of it, but I think we need some homework and some research on first.
100%.
So we're excited about it. We're excited about a lot of future things, but let's take it in due time and in the proper sequence. So we have enough research about the safety, about the efficacy, and what is it really going to do? What can we really anticipate? And who's it for and who it's not for? We don't know that yet, but a lot of potential.
Right, exactly.
I think it's a great topical add-on to microneedling.
100%.
Microneedling radiofrequency with a laser. Fantastic.
Yep.
Super. Makes a great treatment.
And we use it all the time. I use it all the time. My lasers, microneedling, after Morpheus. Yeah. And I've actually used it, I've actually used it spray. It's topical in my facelifts, not injected, a topical spray. It works great there. And of course, there's ongoing clinical studies going to be coming out on its use in the tear trough. There are ongoing clinical studies, so that's when we'll go to that next arena. And I think It's a very good product, great science. I mean, some of the best. I mean, it's been used, and it even had its black box removed, in 2018 or, for, it was, for quote unquote cancer producing, which was not true. So it's an incredible new horizon, I think.
Yeah. Well, something like that, if you can heal diabetic wound ulcers, which really not much heals them, because that's what
Right.
Right. I mean, if you can heal that, you can heal pretty much anything. So I think the potential is definitely exciting. And I think we're all looking forward to that research, because that really could be, a game changer.
Yep. So in conclusion, about what are the 3 take-home messages for our viewer, Todd, on where this whole area is going? Fillers, biostimulators, regenerative medicine. What would you tell our viewer that really is important as they consider these things?
Well, fillers still have a role. Certain areas that you don't want to put biostimulants or bioregenerative, right? Lips. I mean, other areas that you really want to rejuvenate. Any area that moves, you don't really want to put a biostimulant in there. The collagen and fibrin can make it stiffer, so we're always cautious in that. So I think there's a role for all these, right? And I think you need an experienced, knowledgeable provider to say, this is better for this is better for this. Not for everyone, but for you, right? Everything's still individualized, and people get lost in that. Well, should I do this or this? Right? We have to talk about so many different things to decide. Hey, if you're this age, those bioregulatories and biostimulants aren't going to work as well, and this is still a great option for you.
Right. And I think,
and also, I like when providers talk about plans, not just I come in, I have volume loss, replenish it. All right, what's my short-term plan?
right.
What's my long-term plan? And you got to think longer term. Hey, if I have a patient I know is going to do a facelift in 5 years, that's going to change some of the things I'm going to do,
Right.
some of the things I'm not going to do, and also the sequence of that.
I agree.
If you don't ask that question, you're never going to know.
Right.
So that's why I think a plan doesn't just, what do they want when they come in? No, it's like, what can we do for you now that's going to help you in the short term and the long term?
Great. Wise words. I'm a wise physician. Thank you so much, Todd. That was phenomenal. And I totally agree that, the most important factor here is when you're looking at fillers or biostimulators, you need to find somebody that's a, true expert in each of these areas, that's got experience and expertise in it, that will guide you in a safe manner to get the best outcome. So, give us your thoughts, give us your comments on the role of regenerative medicine versus biostimulators or fillers. And of course, remember to like and subscribe to my YouTube as well as to my podcast, RohrichKnose Best Podcast. And again, Todd, thank you so much. It was very informative, very useful to our viewers. And until next time, thank you so much again.